Voice of Korea.
This is Voice of Korea. Dear listeners, now we start the English language service of Voice of Korea from Pyongyang, the capital of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. We now present a mixed chorus, Song of General Kim Il-sung. Here is a male chorus, Song of General Kim Jong-il.
You're listening to VRK, Voice of Korea News Now. The youth and students from across the country touring the revolutionary battle sites in the area of Mount Baekdu present the letter to the respected Supreme Leader Marshal Kim Jong-un. A meeting for adopting the letter was held in the Education Yard before the bronze statue of the great leader Kim Jong-il in Samjian City on the 23rd. The letter addressed to Marshal Kim Jong-un was read out. The letter said, "Those days when we toured the revolutionary battle sites in the area of Mount Baekdu were the unforgettable days when we keenly felt that the only way to hasten the victory of the revolutionary cause of Juche is to glorify generation after generation the revolutionary spirit of the Baekdu, the revolutionary tradition of the Baekdu, the eternal cornerstone and lifeline of the Korean Revolution, provided in the flames of the anti-Japanese struggle. Through the study tour, we have kept deep in our hearts the martyr spirit of resolute defense of the leader, the revolutionary spirit of self-reliance and fortitude, and the indomitable fighting spirit which swept the Baekdu wilderness in life with experience, not in memory of the past historical facts. Keeping as faith the truth that our ideal lies in the road of march to the Baekdu, which was made by the anti-Japanese forerunners, and we should continue generation after generation, we'll make the road of march to the Baekdu behind the respected Marshal Kim Jong-un happy or trying, and build a powerful and prospering socialist country in the revolutionary spirit of the Baekdu," the letter stressed. The letter to Marshal Kim Jong-un was adopted at the meeting. Che Ryong-hae, member of the Presidium of the Political Bureau of the Central Committee of the Workers' Party of Korea, and first Vice Chairman of the State Affairs Commission, and President of the Presidium of the Supreme People's Assembly of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, met and talked with a group of Koreans in Japan for expressing thanks to the homeland, led by Kim Won-hwan, advisor to the Central Measure Committee for National Education of the General Association of Korean Residents in Japan at the Mansube Assembly Hall in Pyongyang on the 23rd. Working people of broad stripes, school youth and children, and service personnel of the People's Army across the country visit the Haeryong Revolutionary Site on the occasion of the 102nd birth anniversary of the anti-Japanese war heroine Kim Jong-suk. According to data available, the Haeryong Revolutionary Site has been visited by working people of different strata, school youth and children, and service personnel of the People's Army, more than 300,000 in all this year alone. In December, it has been visited by tens of thousands of people. World progressives and overseas Koreans are calling at the revolutionary site and expressing boundless reverence for her. DPRK player Choi Sim won gold medals at the 6th Qatar Cup weightlifting tournament. The tournament brought together excellent men and women players from tens of countries and regions, including the DPRK, Uzbekistan, India, Italy, and Germany. On the 21st, Choi Sim jerked 130 kilograms in the women's 64-kilogram category, coming first. She also finished first in total and thus won 2 gold medals. She came second in snatch. The Nampo Kimchi factory has been inaugurated. Present at the inaugural ceremony were officials concerned, officials and employees of the factory, and builders. A speech was made there. The factory will produce different kinds of tasty kimchi in an industrial way. After the inaugural ceremony, the participants looked round the factory. Vigorous activities have been conducted in the Democratic People's Republic of Korea this year to implement the stage plans for protecting the disabled. The Central Committee of the Korean Federation for the Protection of the Disabled organized workshops on such themes as working out a report on the implementation of the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities and made public relevant programs on the work to protect the disabled. Provincial, city and county non-permanent committees for the protection of the disabled drew up detailed plans and conducted brisk activities for their implementation. Construction laws and regulations were adopted to systemize the work for creating an environment of zero disability in buildings. The year witnessed rehabilitation service, traveling service for the repair of prosthetic apparatuses, and supply of auxiliary tools for the persons with disabilities. Successes were also made in the educational work for the disabled, including the improvement of early education of sign language. The number of working units increased, and the working conditions and environment were further improved for the disabled who got the vocational education to take part in the working life according to their wishes and talents. There were domestic games of disabled persons and amateurs, including shooting and archery. And persons with disabilities in the DPRK proved successful at the International Table Tennis Federation Asian Para Championships 2019 and the Para Table Tennis Bangkok Open 2019. A performance of an art troupe of disabled persons was given in China, showing the validity and vitality of the DPRK's policy of protecting the disabled. The Federation is now stepping up at the last stage the preparations to televise the subtitles for the deaf. This year, the Deaf Association of Korea acceded to the World Federation of Deaf, the Sign Language Interpreters Association of Korea to the World Association of Sign Language Interpreters, and the Korea Disability Rehabilitation Association to the Rehabilitation International and International Society for Prosthetics and Orthotics, making it possible to strengthen international exchange in the work for the protection of the disabled. Meanwhile, progress was made in cooperation with international bodies, national associations, and overseas Korean organizations related to the protection of the disabled, and the missions of the UNICEF and the European Union program support here offered aid materials for the functional rehabilitation of disabled children. A friendship delegation of the Jilin Provincial Committee of the Communist Party of China, led by Secretary Wang Chaolu, on a visit to the DPRK, arrived in Hyeryong City of North Hamgyong Province on the 23rd. According to the South Korean online newspaper Jaju Sibor, the Inhabitants Association for Properly Retaking U.S. Military Base in Ryongsan, the Ryongsan Regional Committee of the People's Party, the Ryongsan Citizen Solidarity, and other civic and public and labor organizations held a press conference before the U.S. military base in Ryongsan on the 16th, demanding the United States decontaminate the base with responsibility. Speakers said the U.S. military base in Ryongsan has serious environmental pollution because there were more than 100 pollution incidents, poisonous substance outflow, and experiments with bacteria of anthrax. Then the statement was read out. The daily Rodong Sinmun on the 24th carried an editorial titled, "The Exploits Performed by the Great Leader Kim Jong-il for the Building of the Revolutionary Armed Forces Will Shine in History of the Country Forever," on the occasion of the 28th anniversary of the Great Leader Kim Jong-il's appointment as the Supreme Commander of the Korean People's Army. And that's the end of the news, read by Che Jong-nam. This is VRK, Voice of Korea. We now bring you the immortal masterpiece, My Mother, written by the great leader Kim Jong-il in Juche 49 or 1960.
punctuate light music for trumpet solo and violin. Memory of the native home.
General, this is the forefront. The song General, this is the forefront was created in 1985 or 1996 with poem by Jin Byung-gang and music by people's artist Ri Jong-oh. It is a masterpiece which gives a vivid artistic picture of the long march of patriotic devotion of the great leader Kim Jong-il. Kim Chol-min, Section Chief of the Juche Literature Institute under the Academy of Social Sciences, says,
장군님 여기는 최전원입니다. 이 노래가 창작되던 시기 우리 공화국은 제국주자들의 가중되는 반공화국 고립압살책동과 겹쳐드는 자연재해로
The song General, This is the Forefront was created when our republic was undergoing harsh trials owing to the intensified moves of the imperialists to isolate and stifle it and repeated natural disasters. At the time, the great Kim Jong-il firmly defended the destiny of the country and happiness of the people with arms, crossing rugged passes and mountains on the forefront. The song truthfully represents his immortal exploits with impressive poetic words. The first and second stanzas sing of the emotion of soldiers seeing Kim Jong-il, who visited their far-off and rugged forefront post, and inspired them with bravery. The third stanza powerfully represents the iron will of the Korean people to resolutely defend him, firmly believing and following him in any adversity. The earnest yet elegant melody of the song emphasizes the content of the lyrics. The song is sung loudly today too, telling the immortal exploits performed by Kim Jong-il for the country and people. We have so far told you about song General, this is the forefront. This is Voice of Korea. This time we present the song Long Live the Great Sungun Commander, a song of honor dedicated to the illustrious brilliant commander of the Baekdu, Kim Jong-il. The iron-willed ranks have come following the brilliant commander of Mount Baekdu. With arms, socialism has been defended, dignity of the nation demonstrated. General Kim Jong-il, peerless hero, glory to the brilliant Sungun commander.
present an orchestral music. Glory to the General.
Now here's the female chorus of Faith. Here's the band music. We will go forward confidently. listens to Mailcast, Korea advances under the red flag. Listeners, with this we conclude the English language service of Voice of Korea from the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. Voice of Korea presents its English language service for Europe between 15 and 16 hours UTC, between 18 and 19 hours UTC, between 21 and 22 hours UTC, and between 13 and 14 hours UTC on 7,570 kHz and 12,015 kHz. For North America, between 15 and 16 hours UTC and between 13 and 14 hours UTC on 9,435 kHz and 11,710 kHz. And for Northeast Asia, between 4 and 5 hours UTC and between 6 and 7 hours UTC on 7,220 kHz, 9,445 kHz, and 9,730 kHz. Goodbye, this is Pyongyang.